I would like to thank a few people. I'd like to thank Reverend Merrill and Pastor Robinson for giving me this chance to speak to the church. I'd like to thank my mom and my dad for helping me learn this speech. And I'd like to thank everybody here for listening and giving me the time to say this. I'm happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 50 years ago, a great American, whose symbolic shadow we stand in today, signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to the millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro is still not free. 100 years later, the Negro is still crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro still lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languishing in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. So we have come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to file heir.
That's right.
This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, were agreed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as its citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given black people a bad check. A check that has come back insufficient funds.
That's all right.
But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in this great vault of opportunity in this nation. So we have come to cash this check. A check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and security of justice. We have also come to this hallowed spot in America to underline the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage again in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing glove of gradualism. Now is time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial justice to the solid rock of brotherhood. It is time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. This sweltering summer as Negroes' legitimate discontent will not pass until there is an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality.
Come on now.
1963 is not an end, but a beginning. Those who hope that the Negroes need to blow off steam and will now be content will have a rude awakening if business turns to business as usual. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. But there is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads to the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to meet the majestic heights of physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to distrust all white people, for many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny. They have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. As we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of unspeakable horrors of police brutality.
Right.
We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of highways and the hotels of cities. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We cannot be satisfied as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating, "For whites only." We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I am not unmindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells. Some of you have come from areas where your quest of freedom has left you battered by the storms of persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi, go back to Louisiana, go back to South Carolina, go back to Georgia, go back to Louisiana, go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you, my friends, even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of this creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and little black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and little white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and every mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith I go back to the South with. With this faith we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we'll be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, and stand up to freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This is the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with a new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the high-ning Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let the freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi.
Come on
and
now.
from every mountainside, let freedom ring. And when this happens, when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring every village and every hamlet, every state and every city, we will be able to speed up the day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, we will be able to join hands and sing the words of the old Negro spiritual. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.